The chisel slipped, carving an ugly gouge through the oak slab I'd been shaping all morning. I set the tool down carefully, my hands steady despite the sharp message burning on my phone screen. Evan, I'm leaving you. Jake and I are flying to Miami tomorrow. Drain the joint account, lol. Good luck, old man. 2 sentences, 10 years reduced to a casual betrayal. I wiped the sawdust from my palms, glancing once at the ruined wood. I could fix the desk. I could fix everything. Sophie thought this text would break me. He had no idea what I had prepared for. Mr. Daniels was still waiting in the showroom for his custom dining table, unaware that my life had just detonated behind the workshop doors. I straightened my apron, rolling my shoulders loose, and headed toward him without hesitation. The work mattered. The studio mattered. Sophie's absence didn't. I answered Mr. Daniels' questions about stain finishes and grain patterns with the same calm professionalism as always, even as her words lingered in my mind. She thought I would be desperate, devastated. She thought I would chase after her, but I had learned something long ago about building things. Strength lies in the foundation. When Mr. Daniels left, pleased with his purchase, I picked up my phone again. No trembling hands, no blurred vision. I read Sophie's final jab one more time and simply smiled. Months of late nights, secretive phone calls, new passwords. I hadn't been blind. I had been patient. I opened my secure account app and checked the balance. Intact. I opened my evidence folder, tucked neatly into cloud storage. I sent a single text back to her. Good luck, Sophie. Then powered off my phone. The war she started had already been decided, and this time I was ready. The studio closed at 6, and as the last customer drifted out into the warm Charleston evening, I locked the front door behind him. Alone now, I allowed myself a slow, measured breath. The betrayal wasn't a shock. The signs had been there for months. The sudden attention Sophie paid to her appearance, the business trips that didn't match her expense reports, the password-protected phone she once left open by mistake. I'd seen it coming. I hadn't confronted her then. Instead, I opened a new bank account under my business's name and transferred most of my savings, quietly, dollar by dollar. The joint account Sophie thought she had drained contained only enough money to keep her from getting suspicious. About 2 months' worth of shared expenses. The real money, the real safety net, was secured elsewhere. Safety, protected, just like the studio. Sophie had never really understood how it worked, how I'd incorporated it before we married, how the property and profits were legally untouchable. She'd laughed when I insisted on separate accounts and private contracts, called it paranoid. Now that paranoia was the only thing standing between me and ruin. I grabbed my laptop from the back office and sent a message to my lawyer. It's time. Her reply came swiftly. Everything is ready. I'll file first thing tomorrow. Do you want to serve her in Miami or here? I smiled. Let Sophie enjoy her grand Miami adventure for a few days first. Let her spend money she didn't have and post her victories online. The papers would find her soon enough. For now, I had a workshop full of orders, a reputation to protect, and a future to finish building. Sophie had ended something today, but not what she thought. The only thing she destroyed was her place beside me. The rest, the important parts, remained firmly mine. Sophie and I met when I was 30 and she was 25, both of us working long hours to build our careers. Back then, she admired my focus, my craftsmanship, the way I could turn a rough plank into something beautiful. We built a life together in a small, sunlit apartment over my first workshop. Money was tight, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. As the years went by and my studio expanded, Sophie grew restless. She craved flashier things, bigger trips, newer cars, shinier friends. My work, slow, steady, often solitary, no longer excited her the way quick successes and social media bragging rights did. I started noticing the shift about 2 years ago. The way she stayed late for team meetings that didn't match her company's schedule. The weekends she spent glued to her phone, grinning at messages she wouldn't let me see. I asked once, lightly, and she laughed it off, accusing me of being insecure. I wanted to believe her. I chose to trust her, until trust began to look a lot like foolishness. When I found the Uber receipt to a downtown hotel and a charge for a romantic rooftop dinner she never mentioned, something inside me clicked. From that moment, I stopped asking questions. I started taking notes instead. One mistake she made was underestimating how carefully I listened when she talked. Sophie never understood contracts, bank structures, or legal separations. She thought the custom furniture business was our money, even though I had built it years before we married and kept it incorporated solely in my name. She assumed that being married gave her a claim on everything, just as she assumed I'd be too blindsided to fight back. But while she was dreaming of escaping with someone younger and easier, I was building walls she couldn't scale. Betrayal hurts, but stupidity is worse. I refused to be both a victim and a fool. The first night after her message, Sophie kept the texts coming, each one more smug than the last. Jake says he's never met someone who understands him like I do. You'll find someone your own age eventually. Maybe one of your boring clients. Hope the studio keeps you warm at night, old man. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. I simply screenshotted each text and added it to my growing evidence file. Every cruel word she typed was another nail in the coffin of whatever fantasy she was spinning for herself. I wasn't playing her game. I was building my own quiet victory. Before I went to bed that night, I called my lawyer. No voicemail, no waiting. We had a standing plan. File immediately once Sophie made her move. The paperwork was ready. Divorce filing, asset protection motions, a fraud report for the unauthorized use of joint accounts. While Sophie giggled with Jake over cocktails, thinking she'd beaten me, my lawyer was filing injunctions to freeze all shared assets by morning. I didn't need revenge through anger or drama. I needed clean records, clean wins, and silence. She would only hear from me through legal notices and canceled credit cards. The next morning, I made my way to the bank to finalize the asset separation. I presented the texts Sophie had sent, laughing about draining the joint account, and the bank manager didn't even try to hide his disgust. Within an hour, Sophie's access to anything tied to my name was revoked. By noon, the travel agency had canceled the first-class tickets she had booked for her and Jake, gone too. They would arrive at the airport with their matching sunglasses and rolling suitcases, only to find out they had nowhere to go. Sophie's mistake wasn't just in thinking she could blindside me. It was assuming I hadn't seen the storm brewing months before she ever typed that message. While she celebrated the life she thought she'd stolen, I was calmly setting the chessboard. Every gloating text, every arrogant assumption played right into my hands. She thought this was the climax of her grand escape. She didn't realize it was only the beginning of her collapse, and I would dismantle her illusions piece by piece without ever raising my voice. It didn't take long for Sophie's family to start circling the wagons. Her mother called 2 days after she left, her voice dripping with polite accusation. She spoke about how controlling I'd been, how Sophie had felt trapped, how I had neglected her needs. I let her talk, quietly pulling up the folder of texts Sophie had sent me, the ones where she mocked my age, bragged about draining our account, and laughed about running off with Jake. When Mrs. Jennings paused to catch her breath, I offered to forward the screenshots. She stammered, suddenly unsure, then hung up without another word. Later that week, her younger brother Lily showed up at my workshop uninvited. He looked uncomfortable, fiddling with the hem of his jacket as he tried to defend her. "She said you treated her like a burden," he mumbled. I didn't argue. I simply handed him a printed copy of the hotel receipts, the fraudulent credit card charges, and a few choice text messages. The truth spoke loud enough. Lily leapt without another word, his face pale, realizing he'd been fed a carefully curated version of the story that fell apart under the slightest pressure. Word started spreading quickly after that. Mutual friends, once sympathetic to Sophie, quietly shifted their opinions. It's hard to paint yourself as a victim when the evidence of your betrayal is so thorough, so undeniable. I stayed silent, focusing on the studio, letting Sophie's own actions destroy the support she thought she had. She had expected to win sympathy and admiration for her brave new start. Instead, she found herself increasingly isolated, and the story everyone whispered wasn't about a bitter husband abandoned by his wife. It was about a man who saw betrayal coming and refused to be broken by it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. I sat beside my lawyer, watching Sophie breeze in, with Jake trailing behind her, looking out of place in his too-tight blazer and designer sneakers. Sophie was all bright smiles and fake confidence, dressed in a flashy outfit meant to scream success, but her eyes flickered the moment she saw me, sitting calm, composed, a thick binder of evidence resting on the table. She hadn't expected me to be ready. She hadn't expected a fight. In her mind, I was supposed to be broken, not prepared. The hearing began with my lawyer presenting the financial evidence, screenshots of Sophie's texts, statements showing fraudulent charges, documentation that the custom furniture studio had been incorporated solely under my name years before our marriage, every claim she thought she could make that the business was community property, that she was owed half. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, listened carefully, occasionally raising an eyebrow as my lawyer laid out Sophie's misdeeds with clinical precision. Meanwhile, Sophie's lawyer stumbled, trying to paint her as naive rather than malicious. When they tried to argue that Sophie deserved a share of the studio because she had emotionally supported my work, my lawyer was ready. He pulled up her own texts, mocking my business as a hobby and calling me a boring wood nerd. The courtroom was silent, except for the soft rustle of papers and Sophie's growing fidgeting. The judge finally cut through the noise. "Amen," she said coolly. "You are claiming moral support as financial investment while simultaneously belittling your husband's work. That contradiction does not favor your case." Sophie's face turned crimson. Jake looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The final blow came when the judge addressed the issue of the drained joint account and canceled travel bookings. "Ms. Jennings," she said, "you admitted in writing to removing funds and attempting to use marital." The ruling was clear. All remaining joint assets frozen. Sophie ordered to repay the misused funds, no claim on the furniture studio, and a warning that further misconduct could result in sanctions. Jake had stopped making eye contact with her entirely by then. As we left the courtroom, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Sophie had walked in, thinking she would humiliate me, take what I built, and start a new life without consequences. Instead, she walked out, stripped of her claims, saddled with court orders, and tethered to a future far less glamorous than she'd imagined. Meanwhile, my studio, my real legacy, remained untouched, thriving, and ready for the next chapter. Revenge wasn't a scene of screaming or public breakdowns. It was this calm, quiet victory won by patience, planning, and never underestimating myself again. Sophie and Jake's Miami dream didn't last long. Without access to the joint account and with the credit cards canceled, they were stuck in a budget motel near the airport, a far cry from the luxury beachside hotel they had planned. Word traveled fast through mutual acquaintances. Jake, who had once strutted around like a prize she'd won, now complained openly about the mess Sophie had dragged him into. Their social media, once full of champagne toasts and poolside selfies, went dark within a week. The grand escape had crumbled into a miserable reality of takeout boxes and overdue bills. Jake's patience wore thin quickly. He wasn't interested in a relationship built on resentment and missed payments. Within a month, he packed up and left, moving in with a college friend who had no knowledge of Sophie or their whirlwind affair. Sophie tried to salvage her pride online, posting vague quotes about growth and new beginnings, but everyone could see the cracks. Her reputation at work, an HR investigation into her relationship with an intern surfaced, and while she wasn't fired, the promotion she had once bragged about slipped quietly into someone else's hands. Her family, once so quick to blame me, began to distance themselves too. Her brother Lily, who had stormed into my workshop full of anger, now offered quiet apologies when we crossed paths downtown. Even her mother stopped calling after it became impossible to ignore the full weight of Sophie's decisions. Sophie found herself isolated, the golden future she imagined reduced to a modest rented apartment and a job she could barely hold on to. No admirers, no lavish lifestyle, and most importantly, no safety net. She had burned every bridge she thought she could always walk back across. Meanwhile, I thrived. The furniture studio's business picked up even more after word of the divorce and its aftermath spread. Clients admired my craftsmanship and, privately, my resilience. I didn't need to tarnish Sophie's name. She did that herself. Watching her downfall wasn't a matter of gloating or revenge. It was simple observation. Actions had consequences. Sophie had gambled everything she had for a new life built on a lie. And when the house of cards collapsed, there was no one left standing beside her. Only me, standing taller than ever. In the months following the final court ruling, my studio transformed from a modest custom shop into one of Charleston's hidden gems. Word of mouth carried farther than I ever expected. Orders doubled, then tripled. I hired 2 new apprentices to help meet the demand, both eager to learn the craft the old-fashioned way, with their hands, not machines. I expanded into a larger workshop down the street, one flooded with natural light, where the scent of fresh cedar and walnut filled the air. Every piece I created felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. The local papers picked up my story, though not the personal details. They praised my craftsmanship, the revival of traditional woodworking in a fast-moving digital world. Clients admired my resilience without needing to hear the full story. I wasn't the man abandoned by his wife. I was the craftsman who kept building when everything else crumbled. The best revenge wasn't posting my success online or rubbing it in Sophie's face. It was the steady, quiet climb, growing stronger, richer, and more respected, while she faded into the background noise she had once chased so desperately. My personal life changed too. I stopped viewing relationships through the lens of fear and betrayal. I made friends again, real ones, not just the couple friends Sophie had collected for appearances. I found peace in my work, in the solitude of my studio, in the knowledge that I had survived something designed to break me. I traveled for the first time in years, visiting workshops in Asheville, meeting other artisans across the Southeast, and realized just how much of myself I had once held back, trying to fit into Sophie's vision of success. By the end of that year, I no longer thought of her when I unlocked the shop door in the morning or swept the floors at night. The scar she left had healed clean. The framed quote above my office door, carved into oak, said it all. The grain of a tree tells the story of every storm it survived. I wasn't broken. I was seasoned, stronger than ever, and just getting started. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was adjusting a window display at the front of the studio when I saw her, Sophie, standing awkwardly on the sidewalk, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of a faded jacket. She looked smaller somehow, the sharp confidence she once wore like armor now gone. After a long moment, she pushed open the door, the little bell chiming overhead. Evan, can we talk? I wiped the sawdust from my hands and leaned casually against the counter. About what? I asked, knowing exactly what was coming. She stumbled through the usual lines: regret, confusion. She said she'd been lost, overwhelmed, pressure by expectations she never truly understood. She mentioned Jake only once, a bitter edge creeping into her voice, and brushed past it quickly. Sophie spoke of memories, of the life we built, of how she missed what we had. I listened politely, arms crossed, feeling no anger, no sadness, just distance. When she finally paused, waiting for me to offer some invitation, some sign of hope, I shook my head. You didn't miss what we had, I said evenly. You missed having someone to fix your mistakes. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I didn't owe her comfort anymore. Whatever story she had told herself about coming back, about redemption, ended here. Take care of yourself, Sophie, I said simply, nodding toward the door. She hesitated, then leapt without another word. As the door closed behind her, I turned back to the studio floor, sunlight streaming through the windows, catching the fine dust that danced in the air. There was nothing left to mourn. I wasn't the man she walked away from. I was someone far stronger, someone she could never reach again. Later that evening, I sat in my office, the last light of day fading through the windows. Above my desk hung the framed copy of Sophie's final text. Good luck, old man. Now nothing more than a relic of a life I had outgrown. Below it, the newest edition, an award for Business Owner of the Year. Success wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about becoming someone stronger, wiser, and unshakable. I locked up the studio for the night, stepping out into the cool Charleston air, ready for whatever came next. This wasn't an ending, it was my beginning. Sometimes the storms meant to destroy us are the ones that shape us into something stronger. Evan's story isn't just about betrayal or revenge. It's about preparation, resilience, and knowing your true worth. He didn't win by fighting louder or sinking to Sophie's level. He won by staying steady, protecting what he built, and refusing to let someone else's choices define his future. The real lesson here is simple. Protect your dreams, prepare for the unexpected, and never doubt the strength you're capable of when you're. If you found inspiration in Evan's journey, if you believe in building something lasting, standing tall after betrayal, and turning hardship into triumph, then like, subscribe, and share this story. Help spread a message of strength and smart preparation to anyone who needs to hear it today. You never know who might be standing at the beginning of their own comeback story. Let's make sure they know they aren't alone.